Hello and welcome. I'm Jessie Davis, and today this is a presentation on behavioral and social learning. Today, you will learn what behavioral learning is and find out about some theories in behavioral learning. You'll find out what social learning is, and we'll look at some theories in social learning. And then we will apply all of those theories to the classroom and see how we can use behavioral and social learning to our benefit in the classroom. So the first question that we will be answering is, what exactly is behavioral learning? Behavioral learning theory, or behaviorism as it's called in some circles, is a theory that focuses on the idea that behaviors are learned through interaction with our environment. So that means that we're not looking as much at what other people do. We are interacting, doing these behaviors, and then figuring out kind of what works and what doesn't within our environment. This was proposed and fleshed out by psychologists such as Ivan Pavlov, B.F. Skinner, and John B. Watson. They were some of the main advocates and researchers, and they have shaped what we now know as modern-day behaviorism. Most of our behaviors, according to this theory, are responses to stimuli. So the emphasis is on what motivates that action is not a large part of this theory. Why we're doing things is not a large part of this theory. It's more about our reactions to what's happening around us in our environment. The first theory in behavioral learning that I want to talk about is one of the ones that most people have heard of if you've taken a basic psychology class. It's called classical conditioning theory, and it explains gut level reactions we have to certain stimuli in our environment that we have encountered before. We are essentially conditioned to behave a certain way when we encounter that stimuli. This theory was developed by Ian Pavlov in the classic case of his dogs and the bell. If you don't know about this, a quick explanation is that he was feeding his dogs, and he noticed that with the food, when the food was coming, they would start to salivate. Now, he knew that seeing the food, but they would cause that, but they were doing this before. So he was thinking, well, they've memorized the footsteps coming towards the door, but he really wanted to test that out and see. So he would ring a bell every time he was going to feed them. Eventually, they associate the bell with being fed, and they're salivating. They know they're going to be fed. Then they hear the bell. Even when there's not food coming to them, they start to salivate from that bell. And this can transfer directly to human behavior as well. My example that I've encountered before is that, say your mother always wore the same perfume. You smell it every time she gives you a hug. The hug makes you feel warm and happy, safe and loved. Then if you're in the middle of a crowded mall, your Christmas shopping, your holiday shopping, you're stressed out. But you smell her perfume. Someone else has it on. You smell her perfume. Just for a second, you're going to feel that warm, happy feeling because now you associate that feeling with that smell. So you have been conditioned to behave that way, to have that feeling. This can happen in many, many instances, but it's more automatic, gut level behaviors that we learn through classical conditioning. So another theory in behavioral learning that might be less known but is actually used more and seen more, is operant conditioning. This theory was first proposed by Edward Thorndike, and it states that we do things in order to see what is going to happen afterwards. When we see if that result is good or bad, that's when we decide whether it's a behavior that we would like to repeat or not. B.F. Skinner expanded upon this theory, suggesting that if behavior is reinforced by something that the person performing the behavior wants or desires or needs, they're going to repeat the behavior. We see this all the time, from children doing homework because they get candy, or from their parents or their teacher, or wanting good grades. A lot of times I hear students say, if I get all A's, I'm going to get $20. So they really want to get those good grades in order to get the $20. And, in everyday life, if you take out the trash without being asked, and then your partner cooks you dinner and says, this is because you took out the trash without asking and it really helped me out, you're more likely to do that again because you received something you wanted or needed from it. This is very applicable to the classroom and in a lot of PBIS schools, which we're going to talk about in just a second. Okay, so we have a little quick check just to make sure we're on the right track. Take a minute to read through this question and answer choices to see, and then the answer will be on the next slide. So we have behavioral and social learning says that behaviors are learned through learning behaviors from others, interacting with our environment, trial and error, or watching TV. Okay, we're going to move to the next slide to reveal that answer. If you answered B, interactions with our environment, you are correct. It would not be any of the other answer choices, but we are going to now dive into social learning, where our reasons for our behaviors might look a little bit different. Okay, so social learning theory is a little bit different from behavioral learning theory, whereas our environment is informing our behavior in behavioral learning, the other people around us are informing our behavior in social learning theory. We are learning things from watching and imitating others rather than from reinforcement or conditioning. We do things that we have seen pay off for other people. So we might not have already tried the behavior ourselves, but we've seen it pay off for someone. So if you're at work and you see someone getting coffee for everyone, getting donuts, and you see that everyone likes them, and all of a sudden they're in good with the boss, they're getting raises, they're moving up in the company, you might start to think, I need to get some coffee for everyone. I need to bring in some donuts. I need to make sure I make friends with everyone so that I can move up in this company. We also see this a lot in teenage kids. They look at their peers as role models and imitate their behaviors because they want to be liked or they want to be like those people. So it might not necessarily be a good action that they're always imitating, but they are looking at their peers and imitating those actions. Now I want you to take a second to think about a repeated behavior in your life, something that you're doing daily or almost daily. Do you read every night before you go to bed? Do you wash the dishes when you see them about to pile up? Do you go to the gym every day? Do you make your partner tea before you go to bed? and ask yourself, why are you truly doing this repeated behavior? Are you doing it because it's reinforced by someone? Are you doing it because you have been classically conditioned? Or are you doing it because you've seen someone else do it? We are now going to connect these theories to the everyday classroom. These theories have real world value. They are not just theories, they have been seen in classrooms and social situations throughout history since they were identified. So if we use them in the right way, they can really help motivate student behavior and good habits. If they are done incorrectly, they can promote behaviors you might not want in your classroom. So here I'm going to give some theory, some activities and things that will promote these in the correct way. So behavioral learning theories in the classroom, it can be especially useful to motivate students. It's just a matter of finding the right stimuli or reinforcement for each student, because what works for one student might not work for the other students. Just like what motivates you to do some of those repeated behaviors you have in your life might not work for me or someone else. Teachers a lot of times can kind of create these deals with students by promising some sort of reinforcement that the student sees as a good thing, whether that's just simply praise for doing the correct thing, getting points for some sort of point system, even something like, okay, you get to draw for 5 minutes once you finish this assignment. They can be used as rewards for completing tasks or even helping other students, showing some sort of good behavior that the teacher wants to reinforce. On the other hand, we can reinforce bad behavior. If we're giving a student attention for some sort of bad behavior, that might be what they want. So we might actually be reinforcing something that we don't want to reinforce. So it's very careful. You have to be very careful and really get to know your students in order to implement these theories. Because a student that's acting out, it might be as simple as they want attention. And if you give them attention for that behavior, they're going to do it again. They're getting the reinforcement that they want. In my own classroom, I use Class Dojo as a reward system. I don't, use it all the time. I do it more randomly, and that way the students, they do associate it with good behaviors, but they don't quite know when it's going to happen. So they are doing those more to have a better chance of getting the points. If they're on task, collaborating, helping others, consistently turning in homework, anything like that, I'll award them with a few points. And they can redeem those points for prizes every month or every 2 months. So I've noticed a huge shift in my own classroom since I started using that. A lot of PBIS schools are using behavioral learning to create these positive behaviors. We want to reinforce that positive behaviors more than focus on the negative behaviors, because reinforcing these positive behaviors is how we get the students to repeat them. Social learning in the classroom can also be very important and helpful. It is likely already happening in your classroom or in any classroom, because students are always looking at each other to see what others are doing, and they do imitate. I've seen it firsthand in my own classroom, even with bad behaviors sometimes. If it's someone they want to be friends with, they'll imitate these bad behaviors. So what we can do as teachers is harness this in order to create a positive and student-centered classroom. So we want to, continue to reward those good behaviors. So that's what other students are seeing and thinking, that's what I want to do too. They see it work out for other students, so that's what they want as well. So some strategies to incorporate positive social learning in your classroom. Flipped classroom, very simple. Students are leading the learning. So instead of our traditional idea of what a classroom should be, where the teacher is lecturing, the students are listening, we have the students interacting with each other, collaborating with each other, and learning from each other. And if there's reading, they might do it at home so that they can do the more collaborative activities in the classroom and learn from each other. Then we have imitation. So having students model things, having other students watching that, is a good way for them to learn from each other. And gamification of, reviews or assignments or anything like that will have students observing each other and learning from each other. So, like I said, social learning is probably already happening in your classroom. It's a matter of using it to your benefit in order to create this student-centered environment. So now I challenge you to think about how you will use behaviorism and social learning in your own classrooms. What are some things that you automatically thought about as I was discussing some of these theories? What are some things that you can change, some easy, quick things that you can change in order to use some of these strategies? Maybe it's as simple as changing the way that your desks are, creating a point system, or something a little bit more complex than that. What are some things that you can start implementing in your own classrooms in order to benefit from these theories? So I would love to hear some of your ideas. Thank you for viewing this presentation today. Here are some of the resources that I used to create this presentation. And feel free to contact me. My email is at the bottom also if you have any questions or would like to share anything. Thank you.